Artificial intelligence is reinventing business as we speak. You can either get up to speed or get left behind. The choice is yours, and really, it's a no-brainer. Join Cognitive Path founders Geoff Livingston and Greg Verdino as they chat with AI experts about the latest ideas, trends, and technologies that are creating the future of business today. This is No Brainer.
Hey, this is Greg Verdino, and welcome to yet another No Brainer. I'm here as always with Geoff Livingston. How's it going, Geoff?
My man, life is good. Spring is coming, and though people will be past this day, it is St. Patrick's Day as we record.
It is St. Patrick's Day as we record, so I guess we need to keep our eye out for leprechauns or gremlins mucking up the technology or something like that. And it certainly is spring. I feel like we've got the April showers, even though it's still March. At least that's what's happening here in New York.
Yeah, 100%. Plus, the wind has been ludicrous down here. I don't know.
Yeah, it's windy. Windy. Before we dive in, we've got a great show today. Before we do dive in, I want to just remind everybody, as you're listening or watching, if you like what you see and hear, please be sure to like, to follow, to friend, to plurk us, to do what all the good stuff that people do on social media to get the word out. It definitely helps us to reach new audiences and to educate more and more people about artificial intelligence and what it means for all of us. Speaking of educating people about artificial intelligence and perhaps educating the most important people of all, Geoff, why don't you introduce our guest today?
Thanks, Greg. And I wonder how many people are going to pick up on that Plurk reference there. Today, we have a really special guest, and I think this is going to be one of our better episodes simply because of the topic. Her name is Amber Ivey. And if you're in the general DC or government space, you probably have run into her already, especially in the AI circles. Her initials, of course, are AI. She does a wonderful podcast called AI for Kids, which is really about how to teach. We were making jokes beforehand because I'm from Philadelphia with my accent, my native accent. I was like, the youth, the AI for the youth. But all jokes aside, it really does help kids and parents and teachers navigate how to create AI literacy, I would say, for children. And it's a critical skill set that they'll need for the future and in many ways related to foundation in that sense. She is also, not to over embellish, because she is an amazing person. She is a historically grounded person in this space. She worked with the state of Maryland and data, and she has been helping governments for quite a while around big data, machine learning, and as generative AI has taken the scene, she has moved to her talent to social finance, where she's a vice president of impact advisory. Her job is to help state, local, and other government organizations basically adopt AI. And with that, Amber, how are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm going to virtually pitch you both and myself because none of us are wearing green. Like, what way to show up?
Oh, I know, right?
I don't know if pitching is appropriate in today's society, but I'm going to virtually pitch you both. But so happy to be here. Can't wait to dive into the conversation. And really excited to talk to you all about AI, data, government, and kids.
Very cool.
Also,
very cool. Yeah. So first of all, before we get in, is there anything that's going on in your world that you want to share with AI that's kind of like a hot burning topic that you've noticed so far in 2025?
The thing that I guess is most interesting to me and the thing that keeps me, not to say up at night, but the thing I'm pondering about is how do we navigate the world of all the models and the release of all the models? I don't know about you all being in this space. I feel like I can't even keep up. So if I can't keep up, how are kids keeping up? How are governments keeping up? How are all these folks keeping up? So that's the thing that's at the top of my mind is how do we easily distill what is happening on the ground in a way that allows people to show up where it makes sense, because they're not going to be able to work on all these things and use all of them. There's just not enough time in the world. But how do we make sure people don't get left behind? Because like some people are still not on ChatGPT, the free version, right? They're not using that. And now you're telling me about 4.0, deep research and all these other things. And all these other tools that are released models recently. How do we help people ensure they're up to speed so there isn't a gap? And I don't have an answer for that today, but I know we're trying to work on that at social finance, and I'm also trying to work on that with kids.
Very defer to you, Mr. Verdino.
Geez, you're expecting me to have an answer to
Where's
that.
the answer?
Well,
Where's the answer?
no, I get, I
That's
get,
why I'm
I,
here today. So I
I
know.
get, she just wants the
That's why
answer.
we had her,
Pass
right?
them along. But I guess I will answer the question with a question, which is in some ways ultimately, does all of the inside baseball nitty gritty of every single one of the models actually matter? As opposed, and I'm not saying it doesn't, but that would be a question, right? Because I wonder, when you've got a 4.0 and a 4.1 and a 4.5 and a 4.5 mini and a 4.7 it's like when you put it all together at the end of the day, it's just this massive confusion with models and models and models. And I think the important thing is not to get locked into a model. But I think most people are going to experience this suite of technologies that we call AI through some kind of an application, right? And at the end of the day, it may become more incumbent upon the app providers to decide how to use the right models for the right jobs and deliver those models in a way that allows people to not get overwhelmed and provides them with the features and functionality they need without having to worry about whether or not they are using the latest model, the greatest model, or frankly not. The one thing I will say, though, to me, and I'm not trying to make this about me, is I think there is some obligation for those of us who are in the space who have some role in educating, whether it's adults, business people, consumers, kids, whatever, making sure that anybody who is using any AI models are aware of some of the sort of the biases, the complexities, the things that might kind of creep into the outputs of these models, because clearly there's a lot of that, right?
You made me think about something because I think the thing that maybe it's the wrong way to think about it, but the thing that I've been thinking about is like everyone needs to be using these different models in some way, shape, or form. Not all of them, but you should know how to use a model just for like AI literacy. But to your point, that may not be the way they interact. There may be a whole nother user interface that has the underlying models underneath, and you show up to whatever you're doing, whether it's booking your appointment, talking to whatever the virtual assistant you're using of the day is, and it's just the underlying piece. And I think that's where you get more people to use it and to better interact with it. Because what I've struggled with just with helping people understanding just basic LLMs, the UX honestly is bad.
Terrible.
And I say that because
I mean, we wouldn't need prompt engineering. Correct? I think this is Greg's bailiwick even 2 years ago. You wouldn't need prompt engineering if you had a good UI.
right. And you're telling people to come in there to experience this by just giving them a chat box, not assuming they have some understanding and some level of education, all these things. And then you're saying, go play. It's not like, so people they write an email, they make a joke, they do very simple things. They make kids, they'll make a joke or try to make a picture and they're done with it because you didn't show me how that shows up in my life. But to your point, if you put it in an application, put it within a website, et cetera, that helped me to live my life better. Like that's the thing I care about with AI and data is how do I then make a better decision because of the data I have access to and the AI that is powering that data. Like that's what I care about. And I love what you said around what is the thing? Maybe that's where we all need to focus on. Forget the models and version, like you said, 4.0, 0, 1, whatever. But what is the thing that's powering it and who's building those technologies to make my life easier and not necessarily thinking about what the model is. And if they're doing it in the right way to make sure I understand the biases, I understand the decisions and how they're being made. And I know with the level of certainty that if I make a decision based on something this AI said, I'm okay. My kids are okay. My business is okay.
Very interesting. Yeah. It's pretty cool. Moving forward, though, I mean, with government stuff and the challenges of government, I mean, this definitely speaks to that and the role government, at least historically, has. I got to be careful here, right? Geoff gets in trouble, opens his mouth. He's 3 minutes into talking in the podcast. But historically, government's been a trust broker. And so how government uses AI is obviously a challenge. So how do you help governments really kind of create that learning lab so that they successfully use AI And then I definitely want to talk about government procurement and AI and how that's
Yeah.
used.
So to your point, government has been doing this for a while. When I say this, meaning procuring something or getting some technology or something to make life easier for the people that it serves. Like it's been doing that for a very long time. And they've become experts in it, whether the process is arduous and no one wants to go through is another topic, but it's been there. So, but the thing is, when it comes to things like technology in general, data, AI, we're expecting people who said, I want to make the world a better place by getting people access to the service, et cetera, to now become experts in how do you procure a tool like a data tool, an AI tool. And I don't think that's the right approach, right? I think we have to do that in a better way and ensure that people who are on the ground bureaucrats can do their job and not have to also read a research paper on how OpenAI works. That's not what they signed up for. So what we're
Even
doing,
OpenAI doesn't know how OpenAI works.
right. It's,
Right.
it's like, why would you expect people to do that and then get upset with them when they make mistakes? Like they're going to make mistakes. Like anyone who doesn't live in that world and on a daily basis is going to make mistakes. So what we're trying to do at Social Finance in partnership with an organization called Human Services.ai is that we want to provide government with a playground or sandbox through our learning and innovation sandbox to ensure that individuals can come in and test out the different LLMs in this iteration. In the future, there'll be different other types of AI use cases. But for right now, starting with LLMs, because everyone's using that and everyone's trying to doors are being knocked on from vendors to do this. So what would it mean for me as a government practitioner, bureaucrat, et cetera, to come in and say, hey, I want to launch AI to help people get access to jobs or help people scan their resumes to see what's the best job fit for them. Which one is the best one? Not because you told me it's the best one because you're trying to sell me something, but can I actually play in the sandbox to figure that out? So we allow for different government agencies to either bring in their data or we'll create synthetic data or get open data that's similar to their data set that test it, to test Claude, to chat GPT, Gemini, to test all these different applications to say, actually, this one works for this one particular issue with this particular data set, because we can't keep selling it as it can do all things when we know better models are better at different versions. And we're allowing folks to come through our process with that. Before they buy, it's the big piece. Like, we don't want them to spend millions of dollars of taxpayer dollars on a system that may or may not work or may change in the next week, right? So how can we help them, one, test it out first? And then two, we have experience like doing outcomes-based contracts or thinking about contracting in a different way for government, which is important because you can't sign up for traditional 10-year contracts with this stuff. Like, it doesn't make sense. And you need to have terms in there that allow you to get out, that it makes sure it produces a certain amount of outcomes, that it does things that we normally don't think about with these type of tools. Who owns the data? I've been talking about that for over 10 years at this point. Who owns the data? Now you have new data that's created. Who owns that? I've had too many organizations in government agencies, have to go to a for-profit company to buy back their data because they didn't read the terms and conditions. They sold it away. And with these AI companies, we know the models are being trained on the data. It's only going to make it worse for you to get it back. And we don't know where it goes after that. So yeah.
This idea of a playground or a sandbox to me has legs into virtually any industry, right? And
Yes.
even into the consumer population, right? An opportunity and ability to play around with these things and see what they can do, particularly if you can do it in I would say a semi-guided way, right? So it's not, you don't get the scenario of, I used it to write a pirate poem and then that's it. That's the sole extent of the experience you have with the tool, but an ability to kind of see what is possible and to play with these tools in a way that is safe but productive.
Exactly right. And we're also pairing alongside that with AI literacy for government practitioners for how they should think about testing these tools out, because we don't want to be the place they stay. We want to be the place they come and learn how to do
Right.
this. And then they take the sandbox to do it themselves. Like,
Yeah.
this is not a situation where we want to like keep holding on to them. No, like, here's how you learn about how to do this. Here's some literacy pieces. And now you take the sandbox so you can test it out and move forward and put it into your own system. Because one of the big things I've always cared about is just the procurement process and how, again, well-meaning bureaucrats come in, try to do something cool and try to do something in the right way. But often, as a person who's been in private sector, often we're trying to make the money. So we're not thinking about what that means for these folks. And there's ways for us both to you can make money and do good at the same time. You don't need to take someone's data and sell it back to them to make money. There's good tech is going to sell. Like we've seen that. We all buy iPhone every time it comes out or whatever Samsung comes out. People continue to buy those things because it's a good tech for them. So produce a good tech. You don't have to do these other things to make people stay connected to you.
Question for you before we move on to the AI for Kids podcast. Obviously, it's hard to talk about government right now and not talk about the 800-pound gorilla in the room. Feel free.
Mine is 10,000 pounds.
I bet. How do you see?
Hey, he's only 204 pounds. Just saying.
There's so many directions. Anyway, but from a pure business standpoint, how do you see DOGE and just the general approach towards AI and technology that the new administration is bringing or intends to bring? How do you see that impacting the sector long term?
So
and you can pass if you want to pass. I'm giving you the bailout.
Oh, no. I'm trying to speak on certain parts of it. We're already seeing impact. We've, of course, seen, especially Geoff and I are in the DMV region. I'm sure you're experiencing the same thing in New York. We're already seeing what it means for funding being cut, which is leading to universities being impacted, which many of those are public universities, and something to think about what that looks like for research, for jobs, for the next generation. We're seeing those impacts. Federal government funding, whether it's not just employees in federal government, they're losing their jobs, but all those contracts of people who may have had contracts that have extended further, like multiple degrees of separation away, have lost jobs. I've had plenty of people getting laid off and lost jobs, even at consultant companies that used to have a government contract. So it's having a vast impact. The thing that I'm thinking about as it relates to like state and local government, right now, they have their budgets, but it's going to trickle down once all the federal government impacts actually come to fruition and what that looks like. And I believe in the next 6 months to a year, we're going to see truly what that impact is going to be on the ground. And that's the thing I care and am concerned about, because those are the folks I do work with and support. How do we make sure we figure out how to make it through these times? What does it look like to redirect current funding in state government to some of these areas where we know they're no longer going to exist because of federal government cuts, where they were heavily backed by federal government that are no longer going to be there? How do we think about financing and finance innovation in a different way? As social finance, we think about our whole thing is like, what does it mean to invest in outcomes for government and impact investing and things like that, working with philanthropy, working with government? How do we think about new creative financing mechanisms to help fill the gap for these places where government can no longer exist? Like we do things like pay it forward funds, where a philanthropic organization may put up upfront funding and then partner that with government to achieve an outcome. And then what does it look like to make sure that fund is recyclable? So there's a lot of different things we can do, but I am concerned that we are just at the beginning of this. And I send my heart to those who are on the ground doing this work every day, that we got to think about ways to adjust to our new reality. Like I could cry all day about what is happening, but the reality is it is here. How do we adjust? And I do know that Americans in general, like as a country, like we know how to handle pressure. And I do believe we will figure this out, and we will make sure, whether it's through legal systems, whether it's through being innovative, whether it's through philanthropy stepping in a little bit more, or people just doing things a little bit differently, that I believe we will figure this out and make sure that the people we care about who are most vulnerable are not being impacted as much as we believe they will be.
God, I love your spirit. It's really good. It's funny you say that about state and local, because I forget, but now that you bring it up, I remember with every recession, it seems like the state government, the local government feels that impact the year after the recession because their tax year is contingent upon the revenues that they get the year prior. So makes a lot of sense. And I do think that you're right that there is going to have to be some sort of innovation to step up beyond that. And we're going to have to build back or find the systems in each of our communities to fill in the gaps. Yeah.
And there's going to be a lot of gaps. I do know some of the major players who are in the philanthropic funding phase are already saying they'll help fill the gap, but that's still not enough.
There's
So we
just
still
not
got to figure
enough
out what
foundations. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So I don't know how to briefly
I don't know how you're going to do it.
So I'm just going to own that I don't have a smooth
I was like, good
transition.
luck, Geoff.
But maybe with the Department of Education getting cut,
There we
hey, Amber, we need you to educate kids about AI.
Oh man, rough time.
It's all on your shoulders now. You got to fill the gap. Tell us how you're going to do it.
What? No, but seriously, that's another thing we have to worry about now with the Department of Education and what that looks like, mainly in some of the funding that funded some of the gaps in education, right? Like some of that funding is not going to be here anymore. And one of the things that I care about, as you all know, as we pivot, is helping kids understand AI. Because in the next, let's just say the kids I focus on are between 4 and 12. So in the next 10 or so years, they're going to be either entering their first job as a babysitter or coming out of college, finding a job.
Right.
And we already know that AI, we're in our day jobs, like we're all using it.
Yeah.
A lot of schools don't have funding to train kids on this piece. Like some people are trying to integrate that, but in reality, we do not have a global way to help kids understand what AI looks like and give them the literacy they need, no matter their technology that they have at home, no matter those pieces. So it's important for me to make sure every kid, no matter their zip code, has access to understanding what AI is, even if they will never interact with a chatbot. They should still understand and have the education to be able to interact with the basics of AI. So that's super important to me. And that is the mission. I say data by day. Well, now data and AI by day and AI for kids at me.
I love it. So with that in mind, like, how did you get really focused or hyper focused on kids 4 to 12? I mean, there was I think we talked in the past, there was some realization that adults are more resistant to technology and maybe you can make more impact with kids.
There's resistance, and then there's adults getting older. We do not want to do anything new. Like, that's the reality of it. We don't. And I realized that because I remember because when I was in one of my previous jobs, we had launched a project where there was a natural language processor that we funded to help with the civil legal
Do you
system.
know how this works? Can you show me?
No, but even beyond that, we're even more simpler than that. Like asking Alexa questions, like even that, kids are better at that. And it is what it is. So I had to start with data is a natural extension of AI. So started to learn about what was happening out there, doing research in the space, funding projects or leading projects that were focusing on a component of AI. And I was like, oh, cool. I can talk about adults about this, start a podcast and help people to understand this thing is coming or it's here. And I knew it was going to like rapidly speed up at some point, but didn't know when. And it was like, yeah, people were listening, but then it was like people weren't listening. They're like, oh, yeah, that's cool. But even now they're like, oh, yeah, Amber's been talking about that forever. And I'm like, I tried to tell you. But the reality is as we get older, it's just natural. We get more afraid of things. It's not the same. We don't like change. I also don't like change. And like people are always like, how are you not like change when you're love this? I like change that I can control and that I want to have happen. So let's all be honest about that. So when I was the voice in AI, or I am the voice of the AI avatar, her name is Clara, Claira, and she's part of this group called Create Labs. And they asked me to be her voice back in like 2020, 2021, before ChatGPT came out. They were working with the GPT model through OpenAI because they were like a research partner helping to like get it out there and explore it. So I had got access to the technology vis-a-vis Clara early on. So I'm like, oh, this is exciting. I'm getting all hyped up. And then when 2020, was it 2022 or 2023 when GPT came out? I don't even know anymore.
22.
Okay.
November
So whenever that
30th,
came out,
2022.
everyone was like, what is this? And I'm like, calm down. I've been playing around with it. My voice
It's a chatbot.
yeah, I'm like, calm down. My voice is actually traveling the world right now. And everyone freaked out. And then I saw schools banning it. I saw people like all the news articles. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this was not supposed to be the reaction to this really cool tool. So that's when I realized I'm like, let me think about this for kids. I was playing around with Midjourney. And then I created a picture of a little girl in Baltimore who found a robot who was lost. And I was like, you know what? This needs to be a book. Became a book. And then I was like, it has to be more than a book. It needs to be actually a focus on AI literacy for kids because they are going to be the ones who are doing this work. Someone said this to me in one of my podcasts that I'll share here. This is the first AI first generation. What does that mean? These kids were talking to virtual assistants that are powered by AI before they even got on the internet. Like we use laptops. they use Alexa as their first interaction, like not Google. So even that just opened my mind to these kids are different. And as I visit kids across the country or talk to them virtually, I'm learning that they know way more about AI in a lot of situations, more than we do because they're with it, but then they don't know the pieces that I need them to know, which gets them to literacy, application in those pieces beyond just asking Alexa a question. But they're smart, they know what they're doing, and I want to make sure I focus on the generation that's going to need it more than we do, because we're likely going to avoid it and say we don't want to use it and not use it at work. But those kids are already using it from the beginning of birth, saying, all right, what's the
Yeah.
weather? Help me with my homework. Fill in the blank virtual assistant.
Yeah. And the reality is, regardless of how adults respond to artificial intelligence today, there is no putting the train back into the station, right? So the technology will continue to advance, as you said before, when these kids graduate ultimately into the workforce, it will be an expectation that they understand how to use these tools responsibly and effectively, right? Which was always the irony with social media as well, that the generation that grew up with us with social media sometimes were the ones that were most ill prepared to actually use social media within a business context. We obviously don't want to see that mistake happen again. I wonder, as you kind of take this juxtaposition of adults who are change resistant, as we all are to some extent, and might not want to embrace artificial intelligence in the same way children just naturally are embracing it. What does that mean for the school system? Because you're coming from outside the school system to provide education. It seems to me that I've got a 10-year-old and I know he's not hearing anything about artificial intelligence in fourth grade. I did a workshop recently with probably 20 or so school superintendents, and they were like deer in headlights. Like they wanted to know more about it, but they didn't want to actually change the way they design the education programs in their district to incorporate it. They were happy to use it to write letters to parents, but they didn't want students using it to write essays, right? So how do you think that sort of dichotomy or disconnect really needs to come together to make things, I guess, work for the future generation?
Yeah, I'm seeing the same thing. So I will partner with schools to talk with their teachers or their students and their students. And what I'm seeing is a mix of there's a part of society that's really excited about this that wants to dive fully in, going all the way to like there's a school in Austin, Texas called Alpha School. Kids only get 2 hours of classroom time and it's heavily AI driven. And then the rest of their day, they're doing stuff like building IKEA furniture and learning other like life skills. And those kids their grades and scores are like outpacing folks
Right.
comparable places in the rest of the state. So that's like one of the extreme versions, right? Of like they're fully AI involved. The other extreme version is like banning it and not letting kids use it, but then you're like secretly using for lesson plans, and other stuff in emails, right? So that's happening. What I'm struggling with and why I felt like I wanted to create the AI for Kids podcast, which technically is for kids, parents, and teachers, because I know parents aren't going to let kids listen to something by themselves. And I wanted to give a space where parents could feel like they could get enough information to help their kid along the way, or teachers who don't have the option of having the funding or what have you, they can at least get some of the resources. And we share resources that are out there because there are a lot of places like Day of AI, MIT, like there are a lot of different organizations that share free resources and curriculum for teachers, but they just don't know where it is. So
Right.
the way I'm trying to fill the gap is that I may not can give you funding because I can't, but I can give you access to information that helps you to get what you need to do that, because it's very hard to tell a superintendent who's just now learning about AI vis-a-vis a newspaper how they can use it. And we know that early data shows that most people who are using it and who find the most use out of it is early people who are early in their career. Most folks who are like middle and beyond, it's very hard for them to use that technology because they've been used to the way of doing things. So how can you provide use cases, libraries of prompts, things like that to help individuals know where to start is a big deal. Or you need better applications, to your point, Greg, earlier. You need better applications that just integrates it into my life. A
Yeah.
lot of vendors in the AI for Kids ed tech space are selling things to school, but we're seeing some of those aren't doing as well as we thought they were going to do. So you have to be
Felt
careful.
like AI generally.
Yeah. Well, and it's just what it is. But how do you make sure people know and kids know? Like I do a little exercise, which is super simple, and we all have done it. Which picture was created by AI, or which video was created by AI, and which one was created by a human? Kids normally get it quicker than adults do because
Mhm.
they're in this digital space. They're watching stuff. They're able to tell me, "Oh, this egg yolk is too white on a ramen dish," or "This is this." They're able to share why it's too perfect.
Right.
A cat would never let you get anywhere near it in that way. They're able to use their critical thinking skills. And I think that's the thing that those places can focus on. It's like, how then, if we're going to implement this thing, how do you ensure that people know how to use it in a way that keeps them safe, that allows them to know exactly how they should question it, how to keep their creativity skills and their critical thinking skills? Because that's what I care about most. It's like AI is great, but we have to keep all these skills to the highest level, even more so with the integration of AI in schools, business, government, everywhere
Yeah.
it's going to be.
One of your tenets is that parents should also learn AI, right? And
Yes.
learn it
Absolutely.
with their kid. And it's funny because I have the opposite challenge where I have a kid that's a curmudgeon and I'm the one that's knee deep in it. I'm like, come on, man, like, you should be using AI. Oh, I won't use it. I don't care. And I'm like, you're going to be kidding yourself, man. You're going to be using it the rest of your life. You already are using it. You don't even know it.
Yeah.
But I think Leo's the opposite situation. I think it's probably, as you had said, mostly kids and then the parents don't know what's going on. Why is it important to have that tandem going?
The reason why I think so, I think I'm not a parent, but I'm an auntie. And as an auntie, I wouldn't put anything into my nieces and nephews' hands that I didn't at least bare minimum understand at a one-on-one level. And because AI is so powerful in the internet, like it's very much so intertwined. It's not a thing that's in a box somewhere that you can say, all right, no one's touching it. No one's coming over here that shouldn't be. But it's integrated in a way that it allows kids to get access to things they would never have access to in their
Right.
home. So since we're opening up the doors, in my mind, you're opening up the door to a stranger. So I tell people same way I do with real life, like you don't share your address with strangers. You don't do that here. So helping parents even understand a lot of the parenting skills and teachers, I say this to them too. There's a lot of skills and a lot of things, just common sense things you tell kids. Those should apply to AI and you should know how they apply to AI, such as not sharing your information or data. So don't give out your address, don't give your phone number, don't tell someone your name. Don't go to a friend's house that you don't feel comfortable with, meaning don't use an AI you don't know. Like there's ways to take basic things that we teach kids and apply it here. And if you don't know the basics, you can't then turn around the thing you've been teaching them their whole life either way and apply it to these new tools and technology. And that's beyond AI. It should be any new thing that comes into your child's
Right.
home and your home. You should think about that in a different way. And you
Yeah.
can't do that unless you understand at least the basics of what it looks like.
Yeah. A lot of parents, and I'm not even exempting myself from this, but kind of missed the boat with social, not to keep bringing it back to social
Yeah.
media, but think about the number of parents who don't understand that their kid has like a totally different, separate, secret life on whatever TikTok, Instagram, whatever it was at any given time, Vine, and the things they're doing, the things they're publishing, what they're consuming, how they're interacting. And you look at things that kids sometimes do, like sharing their exact location with their entire friend network, not knowing whether that information is secure or not. And it's not just the child being unaware of the risks, it's their children, and
Yeah.
they don't necessarily know all the horrible things that are happening in the world all the time, but the parent not even being aware of it, right? And now you put that into hyperdrive with AI and, any number of things, right? Because there's, generative AI, the chatbots and whatnot, but then there's also all these factors around data and what does it mean when others have access to your data and your personally identifiable information, or your face print from a computer vision system or whatever. And for parents to not know how to protect their kids, I think, is a huge challenge. So
Yeah. And
what you're
that's,
doing, I think, kind of, what's the positive of a double-edged sword? I don't even know what it would be, but kind of on the one hand, you're kind of educating the parent about some of these risks, perhaps, and some of these responsibilities. But at the same time, they're also getting upskilled in terms of what these tools are, how these tools actually work, so that they have their own personal understanding of their own use cases for these technologies, whether they want to have those use cases or not.
Yeah, because their kid or they decided to listen to the podcast or et cetera. So we try to put like activities in there for kids to do with their parents to help make it really simple to understand. Like the thing I've learned through working in government was like, keep it simple as much as possible. Also through my dad being in the army, it's like, got to keep it simple. Don't make it complicated. So we try to keep it as simple as possible so anyone can pick it up and say, oh, that's not as tough or as hard as I thought it was. I can do that with my kid. Even things like, where is AI we go outside or we go to a store? Where's AI likely used here? Where in our home is AI likely used? Just even simple activities to help the parents start to identify and then to remember that, hey, these things have been around, but we got to make sure parents have what they need so that the next generation, and to your point on social media, we are still struggling with that. Like,
Yeah.
all the stuff around so many different parts of our society, from politics to fill in the blank to bullying to suicide, like so much stuff has been impacted by that. And AI basically puts that on a rocket ship. So we can either chill out and say, oh, it's going to go away. This isn't crypto or whatever was happening. I think crypto still will be here in the future. I'll just say that. But it's not that movement of everyone getting behind the coins and all that. AI has been here. It's old enough, as I told the kids, to be your grandparent. It is here. It is not going anywhere. And now we have access to it. What are we going to do with it? And we got to make sure we know how to use it correctly and without any regulations, which we're probably not going to do in this country just because of competition and things like that. Without regulation and without guidance on that, you got to make sure you're regulating your household just like you would with any other thing coming in and out of it.
Yeah, one of my happiest moments was when my kid told me I'm deleting the Instagram app off my phone. I find it to be too distracting from my real life.
Wow.
That's amazing. I'm not there yet.
Yeah, I know. If the doom scrolling is just too much, too tempting.
Kidding.
Read book, doom scroll, read book, doom scroll. But back to your AI origin story, Amber. You found a lot to do in the past with data itself. And one of the things that we see a lot, and now everybody that listens to this podcast regularly is going to grow because we always come back to this topic. But basically, AI is only as good as the data involved and the quality of that data and how you're curating it. Can you talk about data as a foundational element for the government? Yeah.
So I love data. One, sorry, audience, you got the wrong person. I don't want to hear about this. No, but I love data, and the reason why I love data was because I always thought it was just cool. You could take numbers, pictures, etc., and then be able to make a decision out of it and make a better decision out of it. And my first interaction with data in the public sector was working in the state of Maryland under former Governor O'Malley in a program called Maryland States, which was his signature performance management program that was trying to get all the agencies to put their data out there and make it open so that people could actually do things with that data. And then we could track it, have goals and things like that. So to me, it was like, wait, are we all doing this? Are we all making goals and using data to track what this looked like? And that wasn't the reality of it. And I had the opportunity to post that. I also worked under Lieutenant Governor Hogan and helped to create the Governor's Office of Performance Improvement, which is like an extension of StateStat. And again, using data to drive decisions. And then I had the opportunity to do research on how all states, their few, use data, which is where I was like, oh my gosh, this world of data is beyond what I thought in my little world of like analyzing data in Maryland. Of course, it was a lot of data, but it wasn't what I could even imagine when you go to other places. And I started learning about what was happening in places like Indiana, where they were using predictive analytics to predict crashes so they could change the roadway for individuals. And what does that look like? Or in Virginia, where they were using Waze data to basically predict where there were traffic as well, to say, hey, we need to put a new road here, put a new stop sign and things like that. And I'm like, all these amazing places are taking data to basically make decisions and make our taxpayer dollars move. The reason I came to government, I haven't said this to you all, but was to make government work better for the people that it's meant to serve. And the way I wanted to do that was through data and performance management. So I began to learn about all these things. But then also while you're working in data, you realize that the folks who are collecting it are busy. Bureaucrats on the ground, caseworkers, whoever it is, the police officer collecting the traffic data, whoever it is that's collecting any level of data, they have a lot going on, and you're now expecting them to get it right 100% of the time. And they're not. This is not going to ever happen. So what does it mean for us to make sure everyone is data literate? Back to AI literacy, I also think everyone should be data literate to know how to do their jobs at the basic level so they know what that means. Because when I'm collecting, think about when you filled out a survey or something, you put something in there that you didn't care. You just try to mark it and get it done, right? And you're like 555 or freeze, whatever it is. That
I
is
do that
impactful.
intentionally sometimes.
Yeah.
That's what telemarketers, but yeah.
Right. But everyone has done it where we put bad data into something and someone has made a decision based on our bad data. That amplifies where you're in government, where people are trying to collect information and data to do something good for you. If they're not able to get the information, or they're working with you, you decide you don't want to share your information, whatever is happening. There's so many reasons for incomplete data, bad data. And now I'm telling governments that, hey, governor, hey, mayor, and the folks that we tend to I've worked with in my past, make a decision off of this incomplete data. That is scary. It is dangerous, and a lot can happen. It's better than nothing and better than not having any data, but it does cause problems. Now, at the AI layer on top of it, you're now having a system that doesn't even have the human in the loop, depending on the system, to check on what the output is. And now you're making decisions on people's lives, particularly in government. This is where I care about it the most, because government has been directed to do this and to help people. You have to be very careful when we're in government making decisions on bad data in general, and then bad data that affects AI systems. So one of the things I always tell folks, you need AI governance, you need data governance. They have to exist together. If you don't have data governance plan, well, a lot of folks still do not have them, why are you talking about AI? Like, you need to clean your data out before you're using that data to make decisions. Unless it's a chatbot or something that's super simple, that's okay. But if you're actually making a decision on who gets services and who doesn't, which we know predictive analytics have, they've taken kids out of home using predictive analytics on not so good data or biased data. StateSat, the program I was telling you all about before, came out of the CompStat world, which is basically using data for policing. So if the data is from police communities, you're going to have reinforcement of the same issues. So the predictive analytics tool is going to tell you to stay on the same street because that's where it's been policed before. Or criminal justice system. We've seen predictive analytics systems still give African-American male, same age, same crime, longer times than a white male, same age, same crime, because of the historic data. So these aren't things where we're just seeing it just to be like, oh, data is good or whatever. No, data can impact a life when it's in government and can have really bad effects on people if it's not done well. So AI has to be held up by data governance, data management, and good data practices. And alongside that, you also need to have a strategy for AI governance and AI practices.
Very strong. Why do you think people have such a hard time with data hygiene?
I think people are, let me not say people, I'm going to put it on the system that we've created. I think we make data analytics and all that something so sounds so hard and so complicated. And often I try to pull people back to data is this picture. Data can be you writing on a piece of paper. Like, it doesn't have to be in this big data system. It doesn't have to be in Stata or you don't have to be writing code in Python. We got to strip away all of that and just say, data is you literally, here's a piece of paper that you gave to someone you're working with and they wrote the information on it and you wrote down the services you gave them. That is data. Now, how can I take what you just did to make a better decision for Jane when she comes in the next time? We have to take it down for people to let them know it's not a scary thing, because we know there's data that proves this, that studies have been done. I don't know if it was IBM or Deloitte or one of those companies, I can't remember, did a study that basically said that people spend a ridiculous amount more time when they hear data on a task because it stops them and they get nervous on how to use it. And I think because of math stigma, all this other stuff, people are like, I don't do math, or et cetera. I hear lawyers, I have a law degree. Lawyers all the time say I did law because I don't do math. Being a lawyer and going through a argument, a criminal or a legal argument is literally analytic. It's literally like something you could use in math, but we've been trained to think math is this hard thing and that it's so complicated. So I think just anything with numbers, we as a society, we just cringe up. when I want us to make it more easy and accessible to folks, let them know they're already data stewards because they're using data every single day. We all use data in all of our jobs. We don't think of it that way.
Very good. Very good. I guess maybe this is a good last question for you because we are getting to the end. There seems to be a gap, and this I think is related, where there's a myth that everybody's using AI in an operational sense. It's been operationalized, and I think we all know where that river is coming out of, at least from a geographic standpoint. So despite Silicon Valley hype, what's really happening with people using it, and are they conscious that they're using it?
The funny thing was I was at a presentation for government leaders, city managers for a couple months ago, and a large number of them came to this session, and a large number of them afterwards said, I was never planning on using it. Now I'm going to use it because I heard from you. I think I think we're a little lost on what is actually happening. To Greg, your point earlier, and to Geoff, your point around this user interface, these tools are not meant for everyone to use them in their current state and how they're handed to individuals.
Right.
And if you expect someone who's already busy, particularly in government, working 9 to fill in the blank, 8 to fill in the blank, 7 to fill in the blank, to then go learn another tool, we're sadly mistaken. And that's not going to be what's happening. We are seeing more kids use it. Like they've done studies where kids are using it more, mostly for homework, in areas like that. But the reality is everyone is not using it. And I think if we want everyone to use it in a way that allows them to know what they're using, they have to be more user friendly, and also stop naming them stuff like 4.501.
Oh.
Like what?
I have
Yeah,
at 3.7.
Sorry, I didn't even fit out.
The number of times Geoff and I have had this conversation about how awful these companies are as product marketers,
Oh, it's just so
Horrible.
right?
I mean,
It's horrendous.
I get friends that text me all the time that are finally like trying to use it. They're like, oh, it changed my life. I should have listened to you. But it's hard.
Yeah.
Like, how do you get someone on something that literally feels like you have to be a tech professional? Even with the little chatbot or whatever, it feels like you have to be a tech person to know where to start your app.
Right.
Like, that's not how people interact in life. Never have you went on a website other than Google. Like, Google has done a good job of saying, we are the place for everything. You're better off saying that than say, put
Right.
anything. So that's why I tell people, I say, the way to start using it is to put everything and anything in there. Pretend like it's an assistant, pretend like it's your friend, just so you can push the limits of it. Because I think people just have limits in their brain for what they would put into a chatbot. Google, we search, everything is Google. That's why I wish Gemini had done a better job of figuring out how to come out first with all this stuff. Sorry, Gemini. Because
I think
exactly,
you're
they
right.
already have the culture was already there around everything we want to ask is there, or Alexa or these other tools.
I'm still amazed at how bad it hallucinates. Like people
It is
are
pretty bad.
always talking about how great the summarized search is. And
No, the summarized
tell
search
them-
is horrible. So
do you actually look at the links? Because even though it
Yeah.
references them, it's totally BSing. Like
it's
There was-
almost always wrong.
25%,
Right.
35%.
More than that, I think there was a study, I don't know if it came out end of last week or this week, where it was something like 60% of
It's
the Google AI summaries had inaccurate citations. Grok was like 94% or something. It was
Wow.
it's crazy. They use the crutch of citations to kind of,
Right.
I guess, demonstrate credibility, but the citations are invented.
They are. Words, dead, links, everything.
Right.
wrong. It's
And
so-
then you have, unfortunately, kids who may or may not understand how to apply, because adults certainly don't, the right kind of critical thinking to that information,
oh yeah.
just making assumptions about what's true and what's not true based on inaccurate information.
Wow.
it's a mess. A mess.
Yeah.
All right. So I think that should cut it. But where can people find you, Amber?
So you can find me. My name is pretty simple, Amber Ivey. I'm on LinkedIn. Also, the name of my AI for Kids company is AiDigiTales. That's AiDigiTales, because we're doing both AI literacy, but we're doing it in a way that's storytelling, because we know the storytelling songs and things like that appeal to kids. But check us out at AiDigiTales.com, or just find me on LinkedIn at Amber Ivey. So great to hang out with you all today.
Great to have you. Yeah, this is important work, interesting work, and it's exciting stuff. So I certainly wish you a ton of luck with it, because it's something that's needed. And as you said, especially if and as education programs are cut, uh, kids, teachers, parents need a place to go for this kind of information, because we're not going backwards. So if we're going to go forward, we better have our eyes open, right?
Oh, yeah. Wide open. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you.
So this has been another episode of No Brainer with Amber Ivey. Be sure to check her out. We will also, for those of you who maybe could use a spelling lesson or two, we will have all of those links in the show notes at nobrainerpodcast.com. Again, if you enjoy the show, if this provided some value to you, certainly check out Amber and all of the resources she's providing, including her podcast. Again, it will be linked in the show notes. But also, of course, be sure to do us a proper, and be sure to subscribe to the channels wherever you listen or watch. If you're a YouTube watcher, be sure to comment, to provide, to link, to like, to thumbs up, to do all that kind of stuff that social media creators tell you to do with your time when you're not listening to their content. And as we like to remind you, we do love to get questions from the audience and suggestions, anything we can do to make this program more helpful and practical for you. And we do sometimes have mailbag episodes. Please be sure to drop us comments and questions, and we will see what we can do to get to them whenever we can. And that's it. We will see you in a couple of weeks. Thanks for joining us.